Can everybody hear?
Thanks, Declan.
Can
Yeah,
everybody
thanks,
hear me and
Nicola.
see my screen?
I
Perfect.
can, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to the way I'm going to structure my session, I'm going to take a quick run through the mock exam. What I've done is I've taken the mock exam long questions, and I've kind of done some bullet points in terms of the bits and pieces of the information that we like to see in the long question answers. And then I will also provide you kind of with the references in terms of what modules those answers lie in. So once I've gone through the mock exam, I'm only going to go through the long questions because the short questions, the biggest hint or tip that I could give you around the short questions, backing up what Declan said, put down something. If you can't remember it, put down something. It gives you a 1 in 4 chance of getting a correct answer. But also as well, in terms of preparing for those 50 short questions, I would suggest that you put a little bit of time aside between now and the exam just to read all 4 modules through. I'm not talking about you trying to memorize them. I'm not talking about you trying to kind of get them 100% into your brain. But if you read them through the same as you would reread a book, you'll pick up 70% of the information, and it'll just help you in terms of refreshing the entire module. Like, you have to look at the module as a whole, or the collections subject as a whole. It's all about communication. So if you go through all 4 modules within collections, read it through once. Don't try and memorize it. Just see the sequence and see the structure of the modules. A lot of it will go in a little bit better that way. And that is about as much preparing as I would say you do for the 50 questions, because it's not there to trip you up. It's just to ensure that you've gone through the 4 modules and you've gone through all 4 sets of notes. So that's the biggest hint for the 50 short questions. But again, like Declan said, if you don't know the answer, put down something. Put down something. Okay? Stop me if I'm going too quickly at any point through this, and ask me any questions. It's a total open forum. Stop me and ask any questions that you have, and we'll kind of hopefully have a kind of an interactive session. Okay? So the first question on the mock exam was: write a collections letter or a collections email and to send to your customers. Explain in detail each element of the letter and how it relates to the guidelines as set out in the notes. Please specify if it's a letter or an email that you've written. So if I go into my screen here, everybody can see my screen there, and you can see it's a really busy slide. My apologies for that. And I will send you these slides as soon as I finish up my session, so you'll have them, okay? The main thing to remember when you're doing any exam, and you probably remember this from your days of doing the Leaving Cert, read the question once, then read the question again, and then read it a third time. Sometimes there's 1 or 2 different components within the question, and there's different sets of marks allocated for each component of the question. So just give yourself a chance. Make sure that you take your time, read the question once. You decide you like the sound of that question, that's one that you're going to answer. Read it twice and read it 3 times. So if you have a look at this here, it says write a collections letter or a collections email. So you've got a choice of 2. You can do a letter or an email. The format will vary depending on what it is that you're choosing to do, to send to your customers. Explain in detail each element of the letter and how it relates to the guidelines set out in the notes. Please specify if it's a letter or an email that you've written. So if we break down that question, the first part of the question is to write the actual email or write the actual letter, okay? Then you need to explain in detail each element of the letter. So if you look at the explanation here, the main parts of a collections email or a collections letter, as outlined in the notes, would be the subject line. So you're using clear, professional subject line, setting the tone of whatever the email or the letter is. And it gives you an example there. Greeting the customer professionally and using their name to personalize the communication. Your opening sentence should state the purpose clearly. So what is it that we're actually asking for? We're reaching out to you to remind you of the outstanding payment for invoice, and you're stating the facts. Details of the outstanding amount, clearly stating the amount due, the original due date, and any previous communication. The call to action, politely requesting the payment and providing with a specific deadline. So you're not just going to ask for payment and leave it at that. You're putting in a call to action. You need to know details. So when somebody says, oh, I'll settle that up, what do we need to ask them? Well, when are you going to settle it up? How much are you going to be paying? So that you've got all the facts. And then closing it out, so reiterating the appreciation for business. So we have to be polite. We want returning customers and providing contact information for any questions. So this is mainly coming up. A lot of it comes up in module 4. Okay. Now, don't concentrate too much on this because, as I said, this is the mock exam. But what I will do once I've gone through these 4 mock exam questions is I'll go through a kind of a summary of the 4 modules, and I'll tell you what areas that you should probably focus on for the actual exam. Okay, not going to tell you what's coming up, but it's not in our interest to have anybody failing, and your answers need to be backed up with examples. So to go back to the question here again, you've been asked to write the collections letter or write the email. You're going to break it down into the elements as which we learned about in the collections module, and then you're going to specify whether it's a letter or an email that you've written. So what I would suggest to you between now and the exam time is have a look at your really difficult customers at work and have a look at a letter or an email that you spent a lot of time on in your day-to-day job, okay? Or have a sit and have a think about, some of the really difficult phone calls that you've dealt with over the last few months. And in preparation for the exam, I would make sure that you have a short list beside you of all those types of examples where it went right, where it went wrong. All of those examples, you're in every question that you're given in the long questions, you're asked for examples. And do you remember when I told you, and I would have spoken to you all individually about this, about the exam day, I told you we don't test people's ability to regurgitate the information. We test people's understanding of the content and understanding of the information. If you can back up what you're saying with an example, then there's no question about your understanding of the content. So in preparation for this, I would really have it at the back of your mind, okay, so I need some good, bad, and ugly examples that I can put in to back up the answers that I'm giving. So that's the first question on the mock paper. So it's all about the communication. It's all about the layout of a letter. What are your key components? The main one being your call to action, and then making sure that you are making the corrector understand whether it's a letter or an email and backing it up with an example. So I'm going to stop it there and I'm going to put it out to the floor for questions. Any of you guys have any questions on any of that? And am I going too fast? Because I can slow down.
Katrina, just on that question. So would you say to write out the letter first in full and then comment on each individual bit like down below it or something like that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The letter itself, like you write letters and emails all the time. This is not something that's going to be new to any of you. So don't overthink it, but just make sure that when you're actually laying out your letter, that you think about those key components of information that need to be in there. Because we write an awful lot of fluff all day, every day, where there's no call to action and it's very sort of nicey with asking for payment. If we're looking at the content and looking at the notes, you need to treat a letter as a very structured approach. So having a comment on each of those elements and why it's there, that's exactly what an examiner wants to see in their responses. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go on to the second question of the mock paper. And the second question is give examples. Remember I said about examples? So give examples of good and bad words and good and bad questions. Explain in your own words, not explain in your own words the reasons for your answers. So you're encouraged to give examples of words and questions that are not included in the notes. This is just not reinventing the wheel. It's just thinking about how you speak and the words that you use on a day-to-day basis and how you can change them to get a better result out of your call. So good words, some examples. The power of good words and questions is covered in module 2. There's a little bit about it in module 4, and then there's a little bit about this in module 3 as well. So good words, good questions, and bad questions. So a good question is, you know, an open-ended question where you're inviting engagement from the customer rather than a closed-ended question. Good words, you know, using the word opportunity instead of problem. One of the biggest good words, bad words is talking to somebody about their credit line or their credit facility, rather than putting a stop to their credit. So it's taking the very same thing that you're saying, but turning it into a positive versus a negative word. And therefore, if you have more of a positive outcome in your call, you'll get better results from that. So I suppose while I don't want to give you structured answers on the mock paper, because that's just wasting your time to a certain degree, because you're going to have different questions in the real exam. What I want you to do today, and what I want you to take away today, is the importance of reading the question and the importance of being able to back up your answers with examples. So there is a whole section in Module 2 around using good words and using bad words. And why would we use good words versus bad words? It's all to feed back into getting better results, whether it's over the phone or whether it's in a letter or whether it's in an email. Having a more positive rather than negative connotation will therefore get better results. So again, just to refer back again to the question, and I can't say this enough, giving examples, and let's break down this question just to make sure that we've understood it correctly. So the first part of it is give examples of good words and bad words and good and bad questions. That's the first part of your answer. So here are the good words, here are the bad words, here are the good questions, here are the bad questions. That's the first part of your answer. Then explain in your own words the reasons for your answers. So you can refer back to the examples that you've given. So just the example that I just gave, you know, using credit line or credit facility as opposed to limits. Your credit limit has it as a negative connotation. So you're encouraged to give examples of words and questions that are not included in the notes. This is taking the content. This is taking what you've learned and putting it into your own words. So you can see within that question, there's 1, 2, 3 parts to answering that question. Does that make sense? Yeah. Any questions on that second question? Any questions on that second question? It's like a tongue twister. Everybody comfortable enough with that? Okay. Great. So the third question then on the mock exam. Explain, excuse me, explain the importance of listening and the steps you can take to improve this aspect in your calls. Please use examples that you've experienced or witnessed in your working life. Again, guys, there's the examples. You can have so much of the prep done prior to ever sitting down at 10 o'clock that morning. If you've got your set of examples, and I would make sure that you cover yourself, have maybe three good examples of 3 good interactions, calls, emails, letters, and have 3 negatives. We've all had negative calls. We've all had negative emails or email threads and email interactions. So have those examples ready to go and then tailor them depending on the question that you're going to answer. So have that prepped, and that will give you so much more time to think about how you're putting your answer together because you've already got your examples to back you up. So in this particular question, explaining the importance of listening, this is talked about quite a bit in Module 2. So it's all around effective communication. I think certainly some of you did the listening test as well that we provided. That wasn't compulsory, but the listening skills, it's not just for credit control. That's it's a life skill, being able to actively listen to what somebody is saying to you. Helping identify underlying issues beyond the surface. So that's understanding the customer signals and negotiation. That comes up in Module 4. But really, Module 2 deals with the communication on a large scale. And you can see then demonstrating respect and professionalism. So verbal communication skills for collectors. That comes up in Module 2. So first part of the question is explain the importance of listening and the steps that you can take. So that's broken down into 2 parts. So first of all, why is it important to listen? Okay, it's a very basic question, but if you don't put the answer in, you can't get any marks. The steps that you can take to improve this aspect in your calls. So again, think about the bad calls and think about where you could have improved because you might have missed listening cues. You may have missed something that the customer said because you maybe got a little bit nervous and you probably spoke over the customer. So just think about different examples like that. And bear in mind, what we're testing here is your understanding of the content. I can't say this enough. Your understanding of the content. If you feel that you need to make up an example or make up a scenario to demonstrate the understanding of the content, that's perfectly acceptable. As long as I read it and say, oh God, Eileen gave a really good example here to back up her answer, that she really understands what we were trying to teach in that section. Does everyone understand what I mean then about backing up your answers with examples? You're probably all sitting back thinking, gosh, she's a broken record if she has to say it once more. But it's really, when you get on the day, people do forget and they leave marks behind them because they don't listen to these really simple instructions. So break the question down. First of all, you're explaining the importance of listening. The second part, then, you're talking about the steps that you can take to improve this aspect. And then please use examples that you've experienced or witnessed in your working life. So there's your examples. So you can go back to your bank of examples that you've already pre-prepared before you ever sat down to do the exam. It'll give you a little bit of breathing space on the day. So modules 2 and 4, I would concentrate around all of the communication side of things there. So again, you'll pick up all of this when you read those 4 modules in a row again as a storybook nearly in preparation for your 50 short questions. You will find the different aspects of answering that particular question across the 4 modules. Okay. The fourth question. The fourth question is, what is the best way to deal with a customer who can't pay? Please use examples that you've experienced or witnessed in your working life. Can anybody remember the other 2 types of customers that we're not getting payment from? There is can't pay, and what are the other 2?
Won't pay.
Won't pay and?
Shouldn't pay.
Very good, very good. So there's a whole section in, I believe it's module 3. Again, don't worry too much about this because it is a mock exam, and I'll give you some hints for the real exam. But these types of customers, these are the challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis. So again, let's break down the question. What is the best way to deal with a customer who can't pay? There's a whole section on this in module 4. Breaking down, if the customer can't pay, what are the steps and stages to that interaction? What kind of results can we expect from it? Because there are obviously various scenarios and various reasons as to why that customer can't pay. And every scenario needs to be treated differently. So the customer, what is the best way? That's the first part of the question. What's the best way to deal with a customer who can't pay? And then please use examples that you've experienced or witnessed in your working life. Again, you'll see that all the time. So again, go back to your bank of examples. Go back to a customer that couldn't pay you and describe the scenario. They were going out of business, or maybe not even something that extreme. Maybe they were waiting on another client to pay a large bill before they were able to pay you. Have the example to back up your answer, and then you can elaborate on dealing with those customers that can't pay. So again, if you go to modules 3 and 4, that's where you'll find all the information around the different types of customers that essentially you can't obtain payment from, in 3 different categories: can't pay, won't pay, or shouldn't pay. And any of those, different scenarios could potentially come up in the exam. So that's the 4th question. Again, the main things to remember: the 50 questions, you can only read and revise to prepare yourself for those. Don't try and memorize notes. You will just get yourself into a ball of stress. But read it like a book. Take it from module 1 and work your way through till module 4. When you are going through the 50 short questions, I might be repeating a lot of what Declan already said here, but it's good advice. I would go through all 50 questions and put in your answers for the ones that you know instantly, and then go back to the top and start working your way down through the ones that you're not sure of the answers. If you're absolutely 100% in the dark and you don't know the answer, put an answer down, put something down, and give yourself, at least a chance of luck. Those are the 50 short questions. And then in terms of preparing, as I said, for the long questions, you need to think about reading the question. How many times did I say? 3 times. If you don't read it 3 times, there is a chance you will miss a part of the question where marks are allocated. We cannot give you marks for something that isn't on the page. So just remember that for yourself, okay? When you are answering the long questions, make sure every piece of information that you're putting in and every answer that you're putting in is backed up with relevant examples. This doesn't need to be hard work. It's not like you've never done credit control before. You guys are all in credit control. So just think about your day-to-day job and you have 50 examples straight away that you can be putting down on an exam paper. Make sure that you're demonstrating to the examiner that you understand, that you understood the question and that you're giving the information back and you're backing it up with specific examples from your day-to-day life. So any other questions on the mock paper before I go to the real exam? And I'm going to give you some hints and tips in terms of what to prepare.
Can I just ask, Katrina, so what you're saying is if we have most of the preparation done, the questions are going to be quite similar as the mock, and we can tailor them to those questions.
You can tailor your answers to the questions. So what I always say is having a bank of examples to back up your answers. That's the main thing. The questions are different on the main exam, but the question format will follow this type of thing. There could be 1 to 2 parts per question. That's why I say read it more than once. But it will always deal with something where we will ask for examples, particularly in collections, because we know what collections is about. That's about communication, isn't it? It's about the over and back, and it's very much the module that makes this diploma come alive because it's the module that's most relevant to the day-to-day job. So if you have your bank of examples, Eileen, you will be able to adapt them to most questions that would come up. Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
So that's answered your question without answering your question. I just kind of realised there that I'm not saying a yes or a no. I don't want to get in trouble. Declan, you see, he's there on mute and his camera is not on, but I guarantee he's listening and ready to jump in just in case I give you too much. So that's the mock exam covered. So with the real exams, what am I doing here now? Sorry, guys. Okay. Let me just think about this. Okay, so with the real exam, I'm going to give you some hints. So we talked about examples of good words, good and bad questions. There's a very good chance that something similar is coming up around negative words and how we can tailor our language to get better results. Without faffing around, customers who can't pay, won't pay, or shouldn't pay. That's definitely a section that you need to study. Okay, so we studied different communication styles. Okay, so we studied how best to communicate with customers. There was an entire module on that area. So how different customers will respond to different types of communications. So if that's an area that you're passionate about, I would do that section. I would study that section. Is that making sense? So if people have different processing styles, people receive information differently, explaining things. A lot of people are auditory, they're digital, they're visual, all of that sort of area. I know some of you were particularly interested in that area. And the last hint then What is the last hint, Trina? I should have prepped this more than anything else. It's like trying to tell you what's in the exam without telling you what's in the exam. Um, Certainly so look, we're in credit control, right? When we get to a point where we've got a difficult customer and there's an outstanding balance or there's an outstanding payment, we have to go through a process to get the best outcome. So negotiating, look, it's around negotiation. So negotiation skills, and Declan mentioned earlier on that there's a huge use of ChatGPT. ChatGPT is fantastic. I use it myself. But to pass this exam, guys, you don't regurgitate don't give me a ChatGPT answer. I'll spot it straight away. Give me an answer based on the notes that we've taught you. Back it up with your personal examples. It doesn't have to be poetry. It doesn't have to be, a fantastically written essay, but just demonstrate that understanding. So negotiation is the last area that there is a question on. And that's really kind of all I can say around the real exam. If you cover those areas, guys, you will have no issues whatsoever. And I know you're not going to have issues anyway, because there's still, I know some of you are still waiting on, we'll say, assignment twos to be sent back and stuff, but the quality of assignments has been fantastic. And even with some of you that may have missed the point of the first assignment and kind of sent on a response, I'm really fair in that sense. I give you all an opportunity to rewrite it and come back to me. I want you guys to not just pass, I want you to pass with your distinctions. So you've all been doing really excellently up until now. This is just, like Declan said, it's just a day to demonstrate what you've learned. It's not a day where you need to feel that sort of exam pressure, because you've been doing this the whole way along. Oh, and one other tip as well, sorry. The 50 short questions. 50 short questions. Where do you think we get the short tests from? And I'll leave it at that. You can draw your own conclusions. Your short tests are very relevant, okay? I better pass back to Declan. I'm finished way earlier than usual, but Declan's here now.
Yeah, I was here all along. I was there. You were right.
I knew it. Declan, I don't think there's any more to go into at that now. And guys, I'm available at any stage. If you don't get stressed, pick up the phone, send me a WhatsApp if there's anything that you're struggling with or that you want extra help with, or you just have a question for me. Either ring me or WhatsApp me. I'm definitely better. I get a lot of emails all day, every day, and definitely a WhatsApp. Catch me on the hop and I'll come back to you straight away. But like I said, we're not, and Declan will back me up on this, it's not in our interest for anybody to be failing, and we're not there to try and catch you out. Quite the opposite. It's really great when we get people who we know have listened in the revision session and they can give us these wonderfully polished answers, and we give them their merits or their distinctions. So Declan, I've gone through the mock paper. I've given them hints and tips on the real exam, and I think that's pretty much it from my end, unless there's anything critical that I'm forgetting. I don't think there is.
Yeah, the only thing that I'll repeat is to read the question. That's where it gets heartbreaking, where people, they see a word in the question and then they just write about it. So definitely it's just take extra notice of the verb in the question. So the verb will say, list, describe, debate, discuss, explain, whatever the verb is. That's what we're looking for you to do. So, if we say, there was a great example in the credit management paper. I may have said, list the benefits of a credit policy. And they went off and wrote the most fantastic essay on credit policies. And there was no benefits. And we said, no, give us a benefit to a credit policy. So telling us everything we need to know about a credit policy is not answering the question. So just to give yourself the best possible chance, read the question. The other thing, and I'm not sure because I stepped out for a minute, I may have missed it, Katrina, that if you find yourself, with half an hour to go and you finished your two questions to your satisfaction, there is no problem answering a third question. Now, again, and what we will do if you answer three questions, we will mark all three and we will give you the two highest marks. Is that okay? So just if you are, if you have time now, two good answers are better than three mediocre answers. If you do have time at the end and you've answered two questions and you're happy, if you want to have a go with a third question, we will mark all three and we'll pick the two highest marks, and that's what we give you as well. And then in terms of your results letter will say either pass or merit or distinction. So distinction is over 80%, merit is over 60%, and a pass is over 40%. So that's that. And look, the fact that you've done the tests, you've done the assignments, you've turned up here today, you're going to sit the exam, I have no doubt that you'll get through it. There is nothing to worry about. And again, because people spend time worrying themselves about everything that goes on, what if, whatever what if happens, we will encounter it. So what if something turns up on Saturday? Talk to me and we'll make alternative arrangements. Okay. So let's not worry about the what ifs. And what if you have an absolute brain freeze and you can't remember your own name? We can reset it at a later stage. Is that okay? So that's my alarm. So that's really what we do. So look, relax. That's the important thing. Do the revision, read the notes, summarize it, focus on. Katrina's giving you you have a fair idea what the four questions are going to be. Have a look over that area, have your own notes ready, and then just make sure that rather than copying and pasting stuff into your answer, that what you're putting in answers the question that we have asked and gives the information that we're looking for, and you'll be fine. Okay, so that is that. Anything else anybody wants to raise?
I might just say goodbye if that's okay.
Yes, it is quite okay. So you go and enjoy the sunshine and have fun.
I have to bring my 6-year-old to a birthday party. I can't think of anything nicer, anything I'd rather do than go to an overcrowded play centre. So I would rather be doing an exam. I swear to God. Anyway, listen, guys, I'm available on WhatsApp. Give me a bell if there's anything at all, and we'll see you all next week. All right.
See you next week. Thanks, Katrina.
Cheerio. Bye.
Bye. I will just